Tom, you think it might be better to do it behind the scene?
Yeah, I mean, I really agree with so much of what Steve said and wrote today, and have been saying this for a while. And the stakes of this moment, I think people don't fully appreciate, and I think that therefore the difficulty of this moment, I don't think people fully appreciate. Steve, give me your analysis of the politics. So I happen to believe China's misreading of Trump and America on this issue is actually one of the biggest intelligence failures of the Chinese government ever. And it was an avoidable failure because a lot of what you've been saying, I've been saying, I actually learned from the American business community in China. They actually flipped on this issue a couple of years ago. But I picked up the Washington Post today and I saw an article about how Republicans are now really breaking with the president, particularly from ag districts. Give me your analysis of the Republican politics on this issue and whether you think the president will be able to hold firm.
Remember, Tom, when you came to the White House this time, 2 years ago, you come back from Beijing, we had this exact discussion. Yeah. Remember, the biggest pressure the president's got is kind of from his allies. It's both the Republican free trader, and you can't have free trade when the system is half mercantilist and half free trade. That's what Trump's going after. And I think you're correct. The politics of this is that the Republicans have really put the most pressure on him. His allies on Wall Street have put the pressure on him, not understanding that this is the main thing. This is what it's about. This is going to set the world in one direction or the other for the next 20, 30, 40, or 50 years. And we've let this drift for so long with people that really didn't have their national interests in mind. They had their own self-interest in mind. That's why this is so important. I hate to say it. I would like to see a process started that you had, like in Mar-a-Lago, you had President Trump and President Xi more directly engaged. I think Li Hu, who's a reformer, and Lighthizer are fantastic as negotiators. I think this needs to be principles. I think it needs to be principles face-to-face. But I got to tell you, there is no chance Donald Trump backs down for this. I think he's looking at the good of people on a global basis. I don't see him backing down on this. I think he's going to set the framework for the 2020 election. This is as important as it gets, but I do agree with you. I think we need the leaders, and I think we need to take the heat down, and I think they need to get behind closed doors and start a process that's going to take a long time to take. This is not going to take place overnight. This is not going to take place at the G20. The differences here are too fundamental.
Steve, what are you hearing from, you're over in Berlin now, what are you hearing from Europeans? Because they actually, this never should have been a story about us and China alone. This has always seemed to me a story of both the Europeans and our Asian allies. It is why I supported TPP and why I did oppose the steel and aluminum tariffs on Europe. I think we all needed to line up shoulder to shoulder on this. It should not be us alone, because if you talk to the Europeans, and I'm sure you have, they have the exact same problems we have. What are you hearing over there? What are they saying about our strategy?
See, but I think Trump's strategy here is working. These bilateral deals with Korea, increased defense spending, a bilateral deal with Japan, now a bilateral deal is going to get into with the EU. It's here in Germany. Their business model of advanced precision manufacturing is what's going to be gutted first. Yeah. They are at the tip of the spear. When you look at Made in China 2025, it's the great, you mentioned in your article, KUKA, the great robotics company, is the centerpiece that they've taken. It's Germany's business model. When I talk to both politicians, think tank people, and business people, they understand the storm is right over the horizon. They're going to be the tip of the spear. They're really going to be, I think, the first industrial power that's really gutted. And the Europeans understand, but you got to remember something. The EU were just like Hillary Clinton and these people. The elites in our country, Tom, and you know this, they thought the rise of China on this business model of China was like the second law of thermodynamics. It was some physical reality we just had to accept. Thucydides' trap says we're the declining power. They're the rising power. What Donald Trump said is you've got it wrong. We're not only rising power, we're the dominant power, and we're going to reform the world along lines of free market democratic capitalism. And here's how it's going to be. You've got to break, you've got to lance the boil. And that's what Donald Trump is doing right now. I think our European allies are going to come around. I think they're going to individually come around to this because I think they see the wisdom and the toughness of what Trump's doing.
Steve, it's always been clear to me the Chinese wanted to negotiate with Mnuchin and not Lighthizer. Because I think Lighthizer is someone who knows every carpet the Chinese have sold us over the last 30 years. How do you think that will play out in the administration?
I think you're dead spot on. I think I look at President Trump from my M&A days at Goldman Sachs, Trump is like the chairman, CEO of the company in a massive bet the company M&A, and Lighthizer is the Skadden-Arps partner. That's your deal lawyer. Bob Lighthizer, there's no gap between Lighthizer and President Trump. Lighthizer is the guy that does the execution. That contract, when people actually end up seeing it, I think we'll see how thoughtful it is, how well crafted it is, how it actually works for the Chinese. It takes care of a lot of their corruption issues. This is about transparency. It's about accountability. It's about real-time monitoring. And it's about enforcement. What Lighthizer did with Lee Hood, and Lee Hood, people should understand, is also one of the greatest men in the world, I think. He's a reformer in China. He understands what has to happen to their system. These two have worked together for 9 months. It was the hawks. It was after the Belt Road Initiative Forum in China, when the hawks like Wang Qishan and others got around Xi and said, hey, why do we need the Americans? We got to toughen. This is nothing more than a port treaty from the 19th century. This is what started the 200 years of humiliation. We have to shut this down now. So that red line they sent around was basically say, we're not going to take any of the things that Lighthizer and Lee He have negotiated for 9 months, the basic architecture of the deal. That's why this is a defining moment. And every president beforehand, Clinton, Bush, and Obama, have all blinked. Trump didn't blink. He could have cut a deal that made him look like a hero. He said, we're not doing this. We're not going to be retraded. This is what I need. Lighthizer, you told me you're going to get this. Let's just power through this.